Alright, ladies and gentlemen, maybe you already saw my initial rundown of these rosters. Basically now it seems more certain about what we can lock in. The main changes here, so maybe if you watch the previous video, you'll hear me repeat myself in regards to some teams because they haven't changed. In my mind, Team Heretics made a very big jump up on my tier list. A very big jump up. But I'm going to do a rundown of the teams just to make sure that we are all aligned. Starting off with FNATIC, I think FNATIC has a lower ceiling in terms of strength on paper. I think Upset and Hilly on paper is the strongest bot lane that you can have. We had issues figuring some stuff out, and our dynamic didn't function, so changes were of course natural in that regard. Natural that this group of players couldn't find their optimal level of play together as a group, so you switch things up. The main question for me for this FNATIC lineup: will Wunder, Razork, Humanoid be able to perform better? Because they will have to. Because in my mind, when I look at the ceiling of REKKLES and Rux, I don't think it is as high as Upset and Hilly. Last year, Hilly's performance was very up and down. Upset as well, up and down in the sense of he could bring a high level of consistency, but those turbo games that he sometimes had, you know, they came on occasion. As a synergy, you know, we saw Upset and Hilly not functioning at the same level as the previous year. All in all, the main question for me with FNATIC will be: can Wunder, Razork and Humanoid perform even better with REKKLES and Rux, just because the dynamic will function better for them? Or will they perform similarly? And in that case, I think that FNATIC would be an A tier team. I think Humanoid is a fantastic player. I think Ivan has the capability of being one of the strongest jungler in the whole league, as long as he finds consistency in his effort that he puts into the game, and he really studies his opponents and really prepares the best way he can for matches. I think Ivan can be very strong in best of 3 scenarios. I think that's going to be very interesting for him, because I think Razork, if he gets punched in the face by one punch once, he doesn't let it ever happen again to him. I think the new format is definitely beneficial for someone like Razork, and I think this is where FNATIC could potentially get an edge, you know, in the new format, playing best of 3s. But for me, I would say FNATIC is A tier. G2, they made some upgrades, I would say, in the bot lane, Hansama and Mickey. For most people, they don't see them you know, they don't feel that excited by them due to the performance of the previous year, but I still believe Hansama and Mickey are probably, you know, together with Comp and Trimby, the 2 strongest bot lanes that we have in Europe that are actively competing. In my mind, I can repeat it again, I think Upset is probably the most talented AD carry that we've ever had in Europe, and I hope that he can find, you know, the right team for him. I think this is a big step up, because I think that the core thing for you to do well in Europe, I think, is you need an elite tier mid laner, basically an S tier mid laner, right? Meaning Humanoid Caps or Last on the Perks. These are like the laners that you would put there in that box. I think winning EULCS or LEC without having one of these mid laners is very difficult. I think the meta that develops often in Europe is a mid-centric meta, and often also a bot-centric meta. And I think this is, you know, a very good indication of a team being successful or not. Of course, Perks, you know, Perks hasn't had the best year, you know, he hasn't had the best year, but I don't think it's a type of player that you count out. And I think that Perks can be a difference maker when it matters. He has earned enough credit in my book to still rate highly, you know? Vitality was dysfunctional because of many reasons. I have a hard time blaming Perks for that. I think also Perks performed probably the best in his team in summer. So I have that in mind. Like I have that in mind. All in all, I think G2 with this roster, as I mentioned before, mid lane and bot lane, I think are essential for your success. I'm curious to see Yike, right? I think he has played very well in EU Masters, but all in all, I think that Yike, you know, the big thing that you always have to care about, that you have to care about is how will they function in a world where they are jungling against a Malrang or Elioya or Bo. I think this is very different in contrast to ERL jungling, and the reason we don't see you know, a lot of the rookies in the jungle role stick around for that long is because of how brutal it is. When you're playing in the LEC, the fingers will be pointed at you if things go to shit. I am curious about Yike's development, and in a world where Yike turns out to be, you know, a really fucking insane jungler that can compete with the likes of Elioya, Bo, Razork and so forth, then I think G2 looks like a top contender. But for now, with this caveat, I would put G2 in A tier. BDS, Adam, Shio, Nuclear Int, Crownshot, Labrov. I think that they've made the appropriate changes, definitely the appropriate changes for in the context of the roster they had in Academy, right? They've brought up some of their Academy players, and I think it makes sense. Crowny playing, Labrov getting a spot, Adam after his EU Masters run as well. I think this is deserved. But can BDS reinvent themselves as players, and can Shio find a level of play that will rocket this team to higher levels than D rating right now? My heart wants to say more because, you know, Brownie, Adam, you know, I have high hopes for them. But to be perfectly honest, I have to put BDS here on the D tier. And then we continue to Koi. So they have lost Odoamne and Shigenda gets put in. I think, you know, following the line of logic for G2, right? I mentioned before how having a strong mid laner and Comp and Trimby in the box, and then, you know, third on that list is having that jungler that can compete and play any type of styles and really adjust to what the meta is throwing at the table. And I think Malrang is definitely one of the top tier junglers we have here in Europe. And I think at the core, the most important piece is there for Rogue. I no shit towards Odamna at all. Like in their victory against us, Odamna was essential, right? Odoamne was setting up, like Odoamne and Malrang kept killing Wunder at level 3, and this made them get the Rift Herald, and we had issues with this in the series, right? Odoamne is a very strong player and deserves praise, rightfully so. But the meta that we have in Europe hasn't been revolving around top laners for a very long time. Very long time. And if I prioritize importance, it's like mid, bot lane, jungle. Like that's the importance of like level of play in my mind. Which is of course a very narrow-minded view of the game, but it gives me like a way of judging teams before they even play. Okay? At least this is where my mind goes when I look at priorities. I think with this in mind, I would put Koi at a solid S. I think with the change of Shigenda there, like we'll have to see. They made some coaching staff changes. We're gonna see if they do better in that department or worse. You know, that's something to be curious about. We follow up with Astralis. I think Astralis roster speaks for themselves. I think that Dior has made some improvements, but not enough to satisfy like my view of what should be like acceptable. At 113, I am surprised that he was the one to be slotted in here. Maybe they know something we don't. I think this is the top side here looks like you know, we should put them on Orn duty and make them play, you know, champions that can make Kobe and Yonghoon shine. I think Kobe and Yonghoon are the shining light here, and maybe they can win and upset a couple of games if they are in the mindset that, you know, that's what it is, that Kobe and Yonghoon need to carry this. But they belong next to BDS in the D tier. SK. I think SK managed to pick up a decent competitive roster. Knowing what their intentions are, Irrelevant, Markoon, Certus, Exakick, DOS. These are some players that you could maybe see in the top 6. Exakick is a player that's been hyped up for quite some time. DOS as well has been playing on and off, you know, and he is getting his shot now in the LEC. I think this is a roster that could potentially do some damage. They just need to, I hope that they have strong leadership from Swiffer, their coach of course, because this is a team that looks like they will need it. Keep in mind as well that SK signed Febiven, right, in Prime. And I could see a world, you know, if Febiven, you know, dominates in of course, the ERL, that he gets slotted in here. And then all of a sudden this name looks pretty fucking decent on paper. But Certus had the occasional good game, but I am not sold, you know? I'm not sold yet. But Febiven being on the bench is something that presses on the testicles of Certus, I'm not gonna lie. And I think that development will be very interesting. All in all, I will put SK in the C tier. Vitality. We have Photon, Bow, Perks, Neon, Kaiser. So I am on the Bow hype train. I'm not gonna lie. I am on the Bow hype train. I don't know if the new jungle is going to completely, you know, break his legs off in terms of impact, but I doubt it. My general impression with the jungle changes is that jungle will be very impactful still in the champion choices, in the decisions you have. I am on the Bow hype train. I am sold. I think Vitality made improvements in their AD carry position. I think they made an improvement in the support position too. This is going to be a very interesting dynamic. They also have Coach Carter. Coach Carter having fantastic runs in Misfits. My impression, of course, from outside is that Misfits always did a good job of finding their identity early on in the split, and that made them pick up a lot of victories. And that element of Neon and Carter working together, coming into Vitality, I think that they can bring that element of play, because I think racking up victories early is going to be very important in the format, because then you are more allowed to, more freedom to train, more freedom to test new things, and that's going to be super important also coming into the best of threes. So all in all, I think this is for me an A-tier roster, and if things work out well, it's hard for me to judge. I don't know so much about Photon. The question is, if Photon and Bo are smurfing out of their mind, I think Vitality instantly shoot up to being a contender. But for now, my expectation is Vit as an A tier. We continue with XL. So a lot of people were hyped about this roster, and I can get it. I understand why. I think this is a roster with some solid players, but I don't think any of these players are catalysts as to why they have potentially won in the past. When I think of Targamas or Odoamne, even though they won splits in the previous year, I don't think that they were the big driving engine, driving forces behind their victories. Even though I think Odoamne and Targamas have had really good games. Like Targamas has a good series too. I remember especially in spring, Targamas had fantastic series. But also we had the situation where Targamas and G2 couldn't figure out how to play Yuumi. They couldn't play Lucian Nami. And I don't know if those issues are pertain to Targamas or if they were pertain to Flakid. All in all, there were some significant gaps there in the bottom side that made G2 want to move on from the support. And that is something to consider. Same thing when it comes to Odoamne. It's just a question of, I think Odamna is a fantastic player, but I think top lane is the least impactful role in Europe by just pound for pound, you know, impact when it comes to each role when I look at the positions in Europe. Maybe this is something that changes, but it seems like Riot really wants us to play tanks. So we're gonna be even more tanky in the top lane. So we're gonna see how that develops. But I put XL on a B tier. The reason I put an XL on a B tier is that I think this is a roster that guarantees itself playoffs. This is a roster that can probably get into Worlds. But do I see them winning the split? I see the 4 teams above them winning the split ahead of them. I just believe that they have a higher ceiling. But I believe XL can definitely achieve a high level of consistency here. And I think, you know, the main question mark for me is, can Veteo and Patrick have some breakout performances, right? We've seen them have those breakout performances in the regular season, right? In the regular season, Veteo and Patrick both have had amazing performances that really blow your mind. Really, the both of them. But when it comes to playoffs, it has always fallen flat. And that is the main thing for me here. My skepticism towards Veteo and Patrick in those later stages in BO5 series is what is preventing me from putting them A and S. But if there was a reason for me to put XL in A and S, would be also Veteo and Patrick. But I'm leaning towards the side that it's not gonna happen due to the field of competition. But this is the year for Veteo to do it. He has a very strong roster around him, and he always had that excuse, so to speak, that the Misfits roster was always not that great on paper. But that Misfits roster did a lot of good things to make sure that he looked good, right? And gave him that opportunity, and Veteo was very good in the regular season to seize it. But when it came to the best of fives, everyone knew and was aware of Misfits' weakness. No team was ever afraid of Misfits when it came to the best of 5 series. So, can Veteo and Patrick break out here and really raise themselves up to be those S tier players that they could potentially be, and they've shown that they've been capable of in regular split? That is the main question for me. But I have to say, this looks like a roster that can qualify to the World Championship. I think that this team will be very consistent. And I think that's the main thing, right? One of these teams in A tier, whether it's FNATIC or Vitality, one of these teams is gonna crash and burn, right? It's just bound to happen. It would be very surprising if not one of these teams in the FNATIC G2 Vitality Koi box, if not one of these teams is gonna go completely to shit. That wouldn't be too crazy to think about, because it always tends to happen. There's going to be a team that is not capable of figuring out the meta, loses a bunch of best of ones, and then that challenge of keeping together and figuring out stuff is going to be tested very early. You know, that is going to be the main challenge, right? Let's say FNATIC with their new roster, maybe they feel like coming into week 1, week 2, week 3, maybe the last year is repeating itself, and they realize that, oh shit, you know, it is the same cycle and we didn't know how to break it through, right? Could be the case. And I think XL will always stand tall in that. But I have full faith that Wunder, Razor, Humanoid, even though that they have 2 new teammates, that they also will grow and learn a lot from the previous year that we together. I am confident in. And now for a very interesting one, Team Heretics. Evi. I like Evi. Evi, Jankos, Ruby, Jack Spectra, and Mersa. I think this is a very serviceable roster. I think this is a decent roster. It's weird for me to put them in the B column, because I don't think that they are quite the same as XL. I would say that they're a step below. So maybe we just give them a little B minus. Just give them a little B minus. Put B minus here, B minus, and then we put Team Heretics. So for me, I think maybe they are her. Yeah, for me, Evi was really good at the World Championship. I think he was very strange, but pretty decent. I think he's a very interesting player. I don't know about his English level. No clue. They're going to have a cocktail here of languages. Yeah, the main challenge here will be like, now often in my mind, the issue of language barriers, the confusion that the community has is that, oh, they can't communicate in. No, that's not the issue with language barriers. Communicating in-game, most of the time is easy if you are able to review and communicate together outside of the game. That is the most important. If you can review and actively improve together, and players like Evi and Ruby can find ways to improve themselves in this environment that will be somewhat foreign to them, then they will prosper within that environment. The issue isn't, I've never ran into the problem of, oh, my player is saying something, but I don't know what the fuck he's saying. That has rarely been the issue. Usually, sometimes it's the issue in the beginning of a split. Bro, I remember when Jizuki was speaking English to me in Italian accent, I was like, what the fuck are you saying, dude? Then eventually you figure it out. You figure it out. Because humans have a way of learning how to communicate with each other, but you need to expose yourself to that situation, right? You need to have the right personality to persevere and to have discipline around this topic of always figuring out a way to communicate with your homie. It's very important. If you don't do that, then everything falls apart, right? If you have players that regress and are very extroverted and they're not going to expose themselves to situations where they need to communicate, then, you know, it's difficult. And I don't know the personality of Evi and Ruby. All I know is, you know, I know this one, which makes me think of Heart Surgeon, number 1. I don't know if I'm even allowed to say that. Nevertheless, I think that this is a very serviceable roster. Last time we had this conversation, I thought that they had Zanzara and Ibo, and this is a step up from there. I think that Team Heretics will make top 6, and I think that they will have competition with SK, but I think that the teams above them on paper are just much better. Last but not least, Mad Lions. Not so sure about Chasey, Sihasi, Chas-I. I don't know how he wants to be pronounced, so we just gave him a smorgasbord of options. Not sure how good this player is, so we're gonna focus on everybody else. I think the combination of Elioya, Niski, Karzi, Hilly, you know, I think knowing the players here, I think that Hilly can find form again here. You know? I hope Hilly is fucking grinding solo queue ahead of time of the season. Make sure that he comes in with some fucking fury and vengeance and hunger, you know, to break the ankles of FNATIC. I hope he brings that. Because if Hilly brings that, he will become fucking dangerous again. And he will turn everybody's head around again. I think Hilly in this environment can become the player that we know him to be. But I hope that he recognizes that this is, you know, one of the last opportunities, you know, for him to really prove again what he's capable of. Because I know he's capable of, but he needs to bring that hunger, you know, from day fucking one, you know? And I think this group of people, you know, I think that these type of guys, this type of group, a more fun, you know, relaxed group, I think this is good for him. I have a general idea of how Kazi is, general idea of how Lyoya is. I know Niski. I think this is a vibe right here. This is a vibe. And I think Hilly can find form. I think Karzi has some strengths about him, really. I think Karzi has had good moments. And everyone's putting them in a box like, oh, Karzi and Hilly, they are just gonna go 0-10 or 20-0. This is very narrow-minded analysis. Like, You guys just have no clue about the game, which is fine. This is the same people that are saying LPL is just about team fighting. SCK is so boring. No. You know, it's the same guys. All in all, I think if they can figure out a way to play together, I think that Mad Lions will be trailing behind XL here. And that's where I'm at. This would be my tier list. Once again, I describe my metrics. My metrics are, who do I think has the highest chance of winning the title, right? This is in no shape or form like, oh, this is first place team, second place, third place, fourth place, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th. That's not the point. In terms of winning the title, what are the chances? And also, the ordering of the teams is not is irrelevant. Doesn't matter. I gave you guys my rundown on all of the teams, and obviously this can be very wrong. It's hard to set expectations, and the odds are that one of these teams is gonna crash and burn. One of these teams is gonna overperform, and we're going to have players that are going to have breakout performances that are going to make me put them in the S tier column, right? But we are going off the information available, and that's what analysis is. It's not about making 100% the right prediction, it's about making predictions that follow along the odds of what you believe in is important in the team.